All right, let's get you through all the Dolphins news you need to know about. Not a whole lot on the news docket today, ladies and gentlemen. We only have one news story, and the next two news stories are from Dolphins Wire, and they're just stat predictions for two different players. So we've only got one legitimate news story. Obviously, everybody's on vacation, heading into training camp. There's not a whole lot going on in the National Football League world. Obviously, there's a ton going on in the NBA world, but not so much in the National Football League. So let's get to the first news story. This is a tweet that comes from Omar Kelly's Twitter, and this is actually something that we've talked about before. I could not find the exact tweet because Omar Kelly's feed on his Twitter is dense, to say the least. I saw it on my team stream. I thought it was interesting to bring it up on the show, but he tweeted about how in practice he has seen Bobby, and this is something that if you've listened to the podcast, this is something that we've actually already talked about, but I see a lot of people in the Dolphins community talking about it, so I felt like we should bring it up. But he tweeted that how Bobby has been playing free safety in off-season workouts so far, and how that Mink has been playing in the slot. And this is something that we've already talked about, but I feel like it's super interesting. There was also another report, I can't remember from who, but I think it was the Sun Sentinel. They were talking about how he's also been playing a linebacker as well, as slot corner and some safety as well. So he's all over the field in practice. I think, and Mink has talked about this too, like, how he's having to gain weight if he is to play in the box more, which I find very interesting. I think I feel like Mink can do whatever the heck you want him to do. I've said in the past that, even when Minka played outside corner last year, which we probably should have done from the start of the season, thinking back on it, he was tremendous. And I said this before, I feel like Minka has the same, excuse me, that was my dog, he just coughed. They do that sometimes, I apologize, it distracted me. Anyway, they have the same, if not Minka has better coverage skills than Xavier Howard. Like, his technique, the way he covers, he just knows what he's doing. And you can tell. He's such a smart football player. He's always in the right spot. He's rarely ever beaten. We asked him to do a lot last year, more than any other player on the defense. And for a rookie, that's crazy. He was asked to do so much. It was like he was a 5-year veteran. No one on the defense last year did more than Minkah Fitzpatrick. And I'm not talking about statistically and production. I'm talking about in terms of his workload. No one on the defense had to do more, had to prepare more, had to know more than Minkah Fitzpatrick because he played so many different positions. The point is, and why it's relating to the story, is I feel like he can do this just fine, and I'm actually not against this. Now, I know that a lot of people are concerned about Bobby playing at free safety. I'm not. If you watch Bobby McCain, and one of the traits that you have to be a great slot corner is you have to be able to tackle. Because the guys that you're guarding in the slot are super elusive, very quick players. And are usually, when you talk about the best slot players in the league, are all great run after the catch players. So it's a very important trait to have, is to be a great tackler in the open field. And Bobby is a really good tackler in the open field when he's playing in the slot. And I feel like that's just fine for him to play free safety. He obviously has the athleticism to do it. He obviously has the ball skills to do it. Anytime something is thrown in Bobby McCain's way, he usually picks it off. If you remember the interception he had against Tom Brady in Gillette Stadium. So he has the ball skills to do it. He's a smart player. If you know who Bobby McCain is and you've ever watched an interview with Bobby McCain, you would know he's a very diligent, hardworking, watches a lot of film type of a player. So he fits the mold to be a free safety. There's nothing I could tell. I was like, oh, he can't do that. No, he literally can do what you want as a free. The only thing that, and again, the only thing I will say about a free safety is you will be tackling a lot more than just a slot. Excuse me, I just dropped something. You will be tackling a lot of distractions so far. You will be tackling a lot bigger people than. I think that's probably the only argument. I mean, you have to tackle running backs in the open field. You have to tackle tight ends in the open field, and you talk about, the weight difference there. Corners different. Corner's weight compared to a running back's weight is completely different. But I've also seen Bobby McCain run support, and it's pretty good. So I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal. Depending on what position this man plays, we'll see when training camp comes around. But if he is literally a free safety, which I don't think anybody ever saw that coming for the entire season, and that's he's not a flex player, then that is going to be the most interesting part of this. And I don't care what Minka does. I feel like anywhere you plug Minka at, he's going to do great. It doesn't matter. Bobby's the one that obviously you have question marks for, because we've never seen him do this in game day, especially not on a consistent basis. So this is the thing that's interesting to me. I don't know if he's going to play it full time. Nothing in the reports have ever indicated that. But he definitely is going to have to gain some weight, and he's a small guy. But we saw players like LaMarcus Joyner, who's a very small safety, and he played free safety. Earl Thomas, he's just as tall as those guys. So it's not that big of a deal. And I feel like I said before, he's a good open field tackler, and he's a smart player. So he checks all the boxes. I definitely have, how well is he going to do against running backs and tight ends? We'll see. I can't tell you, because any other time he's had to tackle anybody in the open field, he's done a very good job. So that's really it for that news story. It's interesting stuff. The Minka part of it, I'm not concerned about. I feel like even if Minka had to play linebacker, which is basically him in the box, it's not really linebacker. But that's how they categorized it in the report, is that he was playing linebacker. But he'll probably will like dime or nickel. Maybe not nickel, but maybe he will. I don't know. But any kind of pass coverage on like third down. If you ever a third down package out there, it's a better way to say it. Excuse me, I don't want to burp into the mic. Then I could see that, him playing linebacker. But yeah, it's a very interesting report, and it's like it's a combination of everything that we've heard so far. Like, it's gonna be interesting to see how. And to add one more thing before we move on, is the quarterbacks that have practiced against this defense so far have talked about how complicated the looks are, in terms of everybody's kind of lined up everywhere, and it's very interesting. So that's interesting as well. Josh was talking about that, and so was Ryan, actually, Ryan Fitzpatrick. So it's very interesting. It's very interesting. All right, let's move on. I could talk about that. I was going to bring up a Patrick Chung example. I could talk about this forever. I'm not going to. I want to stay on topic here. All right, so Dolphins Wire predicts 2 players. So the first player is Albert Wilson, and he predicts their stats. DolphinsWire.com predicts that Albert Wilson will have 61 receptions, 957 yards, and 10 touchdowns. I feel like that's probably where I would do it. That's literally just 1,000 yards. What is it? He's 50 yards off. Yeah, 957 yards. I would say he's going to have a 1,000-yard season. I will say he'll have 10 touchdowns. I feel like he's going to be... It's going to be interesting because he is also a deep threat, but he's very good in the quick passing game, and he's really good run after the catch player. It's going to be really interesting to see what his stats look like at the end of the year. He has potential to rack up yards and touchdowns because of those both. He has both traits. He can, go downfield without the ball in his hands, and he can also put the ball in the paint with the ball in his hands. And he can score from anywhere on the field. So I could see him having a 1,000-yard season and double-digit touchdowns because of that. So I agree with this. I don't disagree with this at all. The second player that they predict the stats for is Xavier Howard. Again, this comes from DolphinsWire.com. Let's see here. What do they have to say? Oh, no. This is a different article. Excuse me. Actually, I forgot about this. We have 2 different articles here that are concerning Xavier Howard. That's why I got mixed up. I guess we'll do this one first. Really quick. This is what Xavier... Okay, so this other different Xavier Howard article comes from Dolphins Wire as well. Cornerback Xavier Howard warns SiriusXM Radio not to sleep on the Dolphins. This comes from This comes from Dolphins Wire. So let me get you the exact quote. So this is what Xavier Howard had to say in an interview on SiriusXM Radio. He said, quote, "Man, right now we are floating around the radar. I love doing that and feeling like an underdog. But, I just tell people don't be surprised what you see from the Miami Dolphins this year. Flores is a great guy and a great man." So I'm not going to beat this dead horse because God knows I've beat it enough. But I feel like this team is a lot better than a lot of people are giving it credit for, especially the defense. The secondary, is very talented. And I've said this for years, it feels like, but it's true. It's very talented. And we all know how bad of a defensive coordinator Matt Burke was, so I'm not even going to get into that. But, again, I don't want to beat a dead horse. But he has a point, okay? That we are a lot better than people give us credit for. And there are a few questions. I think there's only two for this football team. Is the offensive line going to be consistently healthy? And are they going to be consistently good? Is the defense going to find an edge rusher? Because if so, this team can be very competitive. Now, those are two big, very, very big questions, and obviously the quarterback position as well. Is going to be very interesting. But I feel like, and the reason I don't bring up the quarterback position when I talk about this roster, and again, this is staying on topic to what Xavier Howard said about don't sleep on us on SiriusXM Radio from Dolphins Wire. The reason I don't ever bring up that as a question mark is I just really do have a lot of confidence in Josh Rosen. And I have a lot of confidence in Chad O'Shea as well. I've said this before, but if you go back and watch the Do Your Job documentary where they follow the coaching staff of the 2014 and 2016 New England Patriots, I think it's the 2016 one, Josh McDaniels talks about how Chad O'Shea has always been in charge of their red zone offense. And obviously New England's a very good red zone team. And some of the things that they do in the red zone are pretty unique. And their 2-point conversion game, which is also done by Chad O'Shea. I'm not going to get into the weeds of it, but there are a lot of plays that people have copied. I'll bring up one example. The screen pass, the Eagles stole that. The Saints also stole that. They run that play a lot. It's a 2-point conversion play or a goal line play where one of the receivers motions in behind a crowd of receivers, kind of like a bunch look, and then they snap the ball as he's motioning, and he throws the screen and he goes into the end zone. I think the Patriots ran it on us last year. But that's an example of a play that Chad had come up with and that the entire league had stolen. So, yeah, my point is he's a very smart person. He's a great developer of talent. And I feel like that adds as well into don't sleep on this football team for 2018. So, I feel like there's a lot that goes unlooked. And I don't want to beat a dead horse, but I agree with Xavier Howard. Don't sleep on this team. And it's interesting that he brings up Brian as it's good to hear that the players already love him as a leader, and that's the whole reason we signed him as our head coach, is because of that, because everybody in New England loves him. Everybody looks at him as the leader, not just a defensive play caller, but also as a very, very, very important leader in that locker room that he was to the New England Patriots. So let's get into the Xavier Howard stat prediction that I didn't do, and again, this comes from Dolphins Wire that I got mixed up with the other news story that we just covered. So Dolphins Wire predicts a great season for Xavier Howard: 42 total tackles, 5.5 interceptions, and 12 passes defensed. So he had 7 picks last year, and he missed 4 games. And it was very disappointing because I feel like he was going to break. I think Paul Krause is second, Dick Lane is first. Dick Lane holds the most. Interceptions in a season. I feel like, I don't know if he would have beat Dick Lane, but he definitely would have been top 3 all time. The way he was going, he's just got a real great feel for the game. To compare him, and again, I agree with these stats predictions. I would say, yeah, 5 is a lot. I might go 4, but 5 is a lot because a lot of people. I would assume people aren't going to throw at him as much. He reminds me more of. He's got great cover skills, too. He's a great man-to-man cover corner. He's also got the skills of, like, an Asante Samuel, and a Champ Bailey, that just have great... I guess that's who I'm going to compare him to, Champ Bailey, because Champ was also a great man-to-man cover corner. But he also had a great feel for the game, and he had a great ball skills, and he was willing to take chances. Asante Samuel was a little bit too... he's Marcus Peters. He was a lot like Marcus Peters, who just kind of would bite on the bait a lot, and would go for the double move a lot. He was overly aggressive. That's the word I'm looking for. So I'm not gonna. That's not Xavier's game. He's more of a Champ Bailey in that way. Like he's also got that in him. Like he just knows when to do it at the right time. Is the difference. He's a great player. He was my most valuable player of last year. and just in terms of the season he had, and the impact that he had on games, was bar none. Nobody else. I mean, other than Minka Fitzpatrick, to me, came even close to, or in Laramie Tunsil. Those three had very, very good seasons, and I'm looking forward to their futures. But yeah, I agree with this, that prediction. I agree with both of these predictions for Albert Wilson and Xavier Howard. All right, let's get on to the fan Q&A. I don't have a big topic for today. Nothing I really want to talk about personally. Because there's nothing really. I mean, obviously, and plus we have a ton of questions to get to. So let's get into it. So this is the fan Q&A. Usually we don't do it 15 minutes in. So if you've made it 15 minutes in, we do obviously a fan Q&A each and every single week. If you want to participate, all you gotta do is subscribe to the channel, and that's it. So this first question comes from SM. He asks, again, this question comes from SM. SM asks, name one player we lost in the past 3 years to free agency that you would love to have back. This is a great one, dude. Jarvis Landry. He was one of my favorite players. If you watched or listened to this show for a long period of time, you would know how passionate I am about Jarvis Landry. I love him to death. He is a really, really good player. He's the best slot player in the league. He's a great player. Some honorable mentions, I would have to say, because there's a lot of them. Charles Clay. I would have loved to have kept him because we were so bad at tight end for years after he left, and he was the last great tight end we had, and he was a very, very good player, obviously. So yeah, so I would say Charles Clay, and I'll throw another one in there because I do have another one. I would say Charles Clay, Jarvis Landry, and I'll probably Olivier Vernon, because if we could have kept those two together, Cam Wake and OV, we wouldn't have had to have gone through this carousel, because people don't really realize how many other defensive ends we've went through since he's been here, since he left for New York, and it's a lot. So I would have kept OV, even though he hasn't been great with the Giants. He had one really good year, and he's been injured a lot. But I would have loved to have kept him, because if he could have stayed healthy, and who knows, this is a what if situation, so it's just as much as a what if he stayed with Miami as if he would have stayed healthy. So those are my three. I would say Jarvis Landry, Charles Clay, and Olivier Vernon. I was so mad when we didn't match the tender for Charles Clay, and the Bills ended up getting him. I was so mad. I was like, out of all the football teams this man had to go to, it had to be the Bills. And he, every game that he played with, most of the games that he played against us, he had a very good game. So should have caught, and I don't even bring it up, but he should have caught the game-winning touchdown against us at home. And thank God he didn't. This next question comes from Take Me Out. Take Me Out asks, hi Skaggs, one of the matchups that I most look forward to seeing is Xavier Howard versus Amari Cooper. Is there a one-on-one matchup that you are anticipating? It's a great word. In terms of our players, or just... okay, I'll stick to the Dolphins, because I was going to say if it's just the NFL, then I would go in a different direction. In terms of a one-on-one, I am so looking forward to, and I think this would be everybody's, Josh Rosen versus Sam Darnold, or Josh Allen. Pick one. It doesn't really matter to me, but I'm very much looking forward. And you know what? I'm not going to muddy it up. I'm looking forward most to Josh Rosen versus Sam Darnold, and I might even just say Brian Flores versus Adam Gase, because the Jets fans over there in New York, Greenville, or whatever the heck, they're getting way too high and mighty. Same thing with the Bills fans. I feel like they really feel like they're just going to beat us up. Like, and again, I don't want to beat a dead horse. I don't feel that way. I feel like it's more even than it might seem. depending on if things fall our way. I mean, there's definitely, I know there's definitely some pitfalls when it comes to that. I'm not saying a lot of things, not a lot, but a few things have to go right. But I feel like it's going to be two really good games between us two, and hopefully we perform at a higher level offensively, because every time we've played them in recent years, defensively, we've done a pretty good job. So I'm excited about that. That's probably the matchup that I'm most looking forward to, Josh Rosen versus Sam Darnold, or Brian Flores versus Adam Gase. Because obviously Adam left us for the Jets of all teams. So yeah, I'm ready to dig in. And my brother's been giving me a hard time saying, oh, they're going to sweep and all this other stuff. I'm like, no, they're not. They're not going to sweep us. This next question comes from Mr. 305 for real. Mr. 305 for real asks, one of my concerns is special teams coach. Is he better than Darren Rizzi or worse? I would like to have your input on it. Love your channel. Keep up the good work. I appreciate that, Mr. 305. And you are for real. You are for real. No, he's not going to be better than Darren Rizzi. Darren Rizzi is the best special teams coordinator in the league, other than John Fossil, probably. But other than that, it's pretty much Darren Rizzi. I'm really upset that he left. It's probably because he interviewed for the head coaching job, which I would have been totally fine with Darren Rizzi being the head coach of the Miami Dolphins. I actually would have really liked it. A lot of former players that played for him came to his side and was very outspoken about how great of a head coach he could be. Reggie Bush went on NFL Network and was like, yeah, he would be a very, very good head coach if he got the opportunity. So he's a very, very good leader. The players love him. They love his personality, even though he's hard on them. And his attention to detail is second to none. That's all you hear from players. So, no, it's not going to be as good as Darren Rizzi. And that's one of the bummers of me thinking about this upcoming season. Is just like, man, even though hopefully that we've improved dramatically at the head coaching position, which we're all hoping, it sucks that we have lost someone like Darren Rizzi, who was the most consistent thing since, 2009? So it sucks, but he's definitely not going to be better, Mr. 305. This next question comes from Ron. Ron asks, with this dead portion of the offseason, have you tried to go and watch the players we have signed as undrafted rookies or the AAF guys? Yes, I've it's been a while, but I know the AAF guys, not really, but the undrafted free agents, yes. I've watched mostly, Preston Williams, obviously. I watched a lot of Preston Williams. And I can't remember his name right now. The guy from, was it New Mexico, Toledo? I can't remember what, I think it was New Mexico. The linebacker that we drafted, who had a very high tackle for loss count, very high production. He just wasn't the greatest athlete in the world at the combine. I would pull it up right now, but it would take me too long. You guys know who I'm talking about, though. I watched a lot of him, too. Like, some of the plays that he made, his 3-year span, I think he got hurt one year. Maybe this was his most recent year. But there was a 3-year span there that his production was off the charts. So I'm very excited for what he can bring. He can be an edge rusher, too, in this defense. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with him. But yeah, those are the two players that I've watched. This next question comes from Hell Yeah Brother Go Fins. Hell Yeah Brother Go Fins asks, is it worth it to put $100 on Miami making the playoffs? I would win $10,000 if they did. I'm not really, I've never bet anything in my entire life. So I would, depending on your financial situation, if you have $100 to spend, I don't see why not. So, that's what I would, that's probably the advice that I would give. This next question comes from SM. He says, is it time to, excuse me. This next question comes from SM. SM asks, is it time, considering injury history, to get someone else besides Albert Wilson and Jakeem Grant to return kickoffs, as they are two important slot receivers? No, because you're losing too much. You're losing way too much. That could be the deciding factor in a game. Maybe not Albert Wilson, but Jakeem Grant has to stay on special teams. He's too important. He can swing a game. So you can't. You're losing, like I just said, you're losing way too much. So no, I would keep them there. This next question. Ooh, I just slurred that bad. This next question comes from SM. SM asks, John Denny has been with the team since 2005. Would you ever put him in the Dolphins Ring of Honor? Yeah, I would definitely put him in the Dolphins Ring of Honor. And he's a long snapper, but it is a position. And I think a lot of people think it's probably like a thankless job that doesn't take a lot of skill, and obviously it does take a lot of skill because there's a lot of athleticism involved as well. So yes, I would put John Denny in the Ring of Honor. It's really been since 2005. That is insane. This next question comes from Ron. Ron asks, why do you think Christian Wilkins chose number 97 instead of his number 42? I don't know, and that's actually disappointing. I like that, number 42. That's awesome as a defensive lineman. I don't know. That's actually kind of weird. I don't know. I don't have the answer for you, but that kind of sucks. This next question comes from Ron. Ron asks, what have you seen or heard from head coach Flores or any of the other defensive staff that gives you confidence that they will teach our defensive linemen moves and how to use their hands? Well, I don't know about that specific. That's very specific. But in terms of their ability to teach and technique and stuff like that, that has been an emphasis in off-season workouts thus far. Because, Brian has come out and said, and Bill Belichick says the same thing, and that really early on, and so has John Harbaugh, they all, coincidentally have said the same thing about what they want to get done in the early portions of the year. So Brian Flores has said this as well. It's really fundamentals and technique. That's what they're trying to get down earlier on ahead of training camp. So that is what gives me the confidence that they're going to get that kind of stuff down. Technique and fundamentals and penalties have been a huge emphasis, and that's something that Don Shula focused on a lot, and Bill Parcells focused on a lot, and Tom Landry focused on a lot. All of the great coaches focused on this. Is attention to detail, technique, and discipline. So that is something that has not been emphasized over the last 10 years, and I'm very excited that it's coming back, because obviously when Adam Gase was here, we were a very, very heavily penalized football team. And a lot of big plays and a lot of drive killers came from that. So I'm excited. That is why I have confidence that I have confidence, and that is why. Just because of the emphasis that has been put on it thus far. This question comes from Douglas Ward. Douglas Ward asks, hey Skaggs, as we head into the 2019 season, tight end is a position we would like to get more production from, especially with Mike Gesicki. Who would you consider our best 5 tight ends in Dolphins history? Ooh. That's a tough one. The best tight ends in Dolphins history. We haven't had a really great history with tight ends, to be honest with you. There've been a lot of good players, but not Hall of Fame caliber players. That's why it's not really coming to me. I think Joe Rose had that great game in the Super Bowl. Even though we got destroyed, he caught a couple balls. I would have to look this up. I'm not even joking around. I gotta get names, and then I'll rank them. Jim Mandich, I think is how you say his name. He was great. Charles Clay, I don't know if you would put him in the top 5, but statistically, I think he would probably get up there just because of individual seasons. Man, that's a tough one. I'm typing as I'm trying to think here. I'm sure there's someone I'm forgetting. We've had a lot of really just solid. What's his name? Dan Marino era. Kind of early 90s or mid 90s probably. Starts with a T. I'm losing it a little bit. Keith Jackson's great. Yeah, Keith was great. I'm making sure Keith played for us. I think Keith played for us. Yeah. All right. Here's a list of Dolphins tight ends. Keith Jackson. Yeah. Farrell Edmonds. Dan Johnson, Troy Drayton is who I was thinking about. Yeah, Troy Drayton. Randall McMichael. Charles Clay. Alright, here's the top 4. Alright, well, where are they? Jim Mandich, Joe Rose, Bruce Hardy. Yeah, see, like, Joe, again, it's different now. Joe Rose scored 13 total touchdowns in his career. Jim Mandich, I would probably, because he's probably the most well, like, known out of all of them. I think Jim is, yeah. So, yeah, those are some of the names. If I had to rank them, there's really not a ranking to that. I would probably say Joe Rose, Jim Mandich, Troy Drayton. That's 3, right? Keith Jackson and Charles Clay. Those probably be my top 5. Alright, let's move on. That was a tough one, man. There's a lot of just, like, solid guys that aren't, like I just read you, he had Joe Rose 3. And Joe Rose had 1,000 career yards. So, like, that is the kind of, caliber player. Not to diss on Joe Rose, I'm just saying. Trying to find my place. Okay, here we go. So yeah, there you go, Douglas. There's your top 5 tight ends. This next question comes from SM. SM asks, Skaggs, if you had to choose, the Dolphins make the playoffs for the next 5 years, but Tom Brady continues to play for 5 more years, or Tom Brady retires tomorrow, but the Dolphins miss the playoffs for the next 5 years. That is the easiest answer to a question ever. The Dolphins go to the playoffs for the next 5 years. It's not even a question. This next question comes from David. David asks, which players are you most excited to see once pads come on, if I could talk. The running backs, all of them. Myles Gaskin, Kenyon Drake, Mark Walton, obviously Kalen Ballage. Yeah, I'm excited to see the tight ends as well. So those are the 2 positions that come to mind. Obviously, Isaiah Prince, Michael Dieter, and whoever the heck they're trying to fill. Because Jesse Davis has been playing a lot of right tackle, so I'll probably say Jesse Davis too. Mainly the offensive line. Yeah, those are the positions that I'm most excited for. And in terms of defense, whoever the heck is gonna, all of the edge rushers, all of them, everyone on the roster, those are the guys. And obviously Christian Wilkins, I'm not gonna put him in there because the ones that I named before Christian Wilkins are the ones that I'm keeping my eye on. This next question comes from Ahmed. He asks, Kenyon Drake is projected to have the 3rd worst stats of any running back in the league on one website I saw. Could Ballage potentially have better stats and really break out this season? Also, what do you think of Robert and... Oh, God. And I know he used to play for the Cardinals. I can never say his name. Ndimchi, or however say his name. Ndimchi... Alright, I'm not even going to try. Rest of the year. I have not seen that video, so I can't tell you. And in terms of Kenyon Drake, that's ridiculous. I'm not even. He's gonna have over 1,000 yards from scrimmage again, so that's ridiculous. He's gonna be very, very prominent in the pass game and running game. He's gonna be James White, but he's a better runner. So in this offense, so think about that. Visualize that. This next question comes from Douglas. We're going to ask him to do some of the same things James White did. All right, this next question comes from Douglas Ward. Douglas Ward asks, "Hey Skaggs, pick 3 games that you would enjoy the most where we destroy our opponents and shut the national media up. A big one-sided Dolphins wins." Big one-sided Dolphins wins. So, the games that I would most enjoy watching, obviously the Jets game, because I want to, obviously Adam Gase is there now, so I want to, punt that ball throughout the, here's what I really want. I want to blow out the Bills if this was a fantasy, I would want to blow out the Bills in Buffalo. I would want to blow out the Jets, doesn't matter where, and I would want to blow out the New England Patriots in Gillette Stadium. Those would be my 3 games. I really want to blow the Bills out. We haven't blown the Bills out in so long, and people forget. Back in the day, we used to kill the Bills until really the 90s. And somewhere in the 2000s, it's just been off the rails for some reason. But in the 70s, we used to crush them. Like, if you saw the scores from the 70s, you would think it was a Madden game. Like, we used to put, 55 up on them. So, yeah, to recap, the Bills in Buffalo, the Jets, doesn't matter where, and New England in Gillette Stadium. This next question comes from David. David asks, "Do we have anyone on our team that you would consider a, quote, physical presence? An opposing player like Sue Incognito, Quentin Nelson." Physical presence. Raekwon McMillan, probably, and TJ McDonald. I would say are our hard-hitting players. On offense, Chandler Cox, I would say. He's a tough dude. He reminds me of Kyle Juszczyk. The second part to David's question, David asks, "I feel like the mindset / game plan the coaches want to implement is a team full of physical players like the Patriots, old school hard-nosed football. However, we are still full of finesse players. No one that is really going to snack you in the mouth. Finesse hasn't worked for us in the past. How do you see this playing out?" I feel like we do. I feel like Michael Dieter, he comes from the Big Ten, which is a smash-mouth division. Lammy Tunsil came from the SEC, even though he's not the greatest run blocker in the world. Let's get off the offensive line. In terms of, when we go on the I formation, who's going to smack heads and linebackers? Chandler and Cox. He's going to get in there and get things done. So, yeah. I feel like we have enough on offense to be physical, and if you practice I formation in training camp, you will just inherently be that team, especially in preseason. You're just going to be not a lot of teams do that, and you will be more physical just because of that, because that's what you have to do in that formation. And we will be doing it a lot up until the regular season, so we will be prepared. I feel like the team will be ready to go. This next question comes from Ron. Ron asks, "If we are keeping Minka at cornerback / slot and hearing Flores is working Bob McCain to free safety, wouldn't it have been way smarter to have drafted Nazir Adderley in the 3rd round, someone who is a first-round talent that could have gotten in the 3rd, been gotten in the 3rd to be our free safety? I don't think it's smart to keep repeating the same errors as a franchise, switching players' positions due to the lack of a long-term plan to address roster holes." I disagree with this particular example because, first of all, we were loaded at safety. We have 2 Pro Bowl strong safeties that have been to the Pro Bowl in the past. We have a safety that we drafted in the 1st round, Minkah Fitzpatrick, who is a great free safety and could be the best in the league if we put him there. So I really don't see why we're doing this. And it's not a bad thing, because even if they switch, I feel like the job will be done just fine. I know Mika's going to do his job outstandingly, and Bobby I don't know, but I have a good faith that he will. So the players that are going to be there are great. They have the potential to be great. So if you're the GM of the Dolphins and you look at the safeties, and again, this is just me, and I've said this 1,000 times, but I would have already put Minka at free, and either Rashad or TJ at strong safety. I would have preferably, I think Rashad is a way better player, so I would put, if I'm a GM, I would put Rashad there. So you really don't have a need when you're going into the draft at safety. And again, to the reporters there, it probably looked like he was playing safety. Earlier in the video, I was going to make an example of Patrick Chung, who basically lines up all over the field, but he's listed as a safety, but he doesn't do that. He does a lot of different things. Like, you'll see him line up to what looks like a slot corner, even though he's kind of shading running back that's lined up, a tight end that's lined up, sometimes a receiver. He did that to Jarvis a lot, where they would man Patrick Chung up with Jarvis. They do that a lot with him, and it looks like he's doing different position things, but he's not. He's kind of a positionless player. That could be what they're doing with Bobby McCain, just to confuse defenses. It could be just a look that we're giving a defense that we use. So, who knows what it really means, is basically what I'm saying. So if that answers your question, there you go. It's a great question, though, Ron. This next question comes from SM. SM asks, Skaggs, we know that our secondary is the strongest squad. We have no defense yet. Excuse me, let me repeat that. SM asks, Skaggs, we know that our secondary is the strongest squad. We have on defense. Yeah, our pass rush from the front line is very unproven, leading me to think that our pass rush will most likely come from the linebackers. Talk about how dominant our defense can be with this coaching staff going against 3 second-year quarterbacks in our division. Well, it won't be if we can't get after the quarterback. Even though I feel like Brian, and last year he had this problem. He didn't have a dominant pass rusher. Anytime they needed that, they put Dante Howard at defensive end. But they blitzed a lot of the time. They blitzed more than ever I think I've ever seen them blitz. It was a lot of zero coverage blitz. Think about Rex Ryan, but less zone. It was very Todd Bowles, basically. Kind of the defense. So if you do that, you have to have people that can cover. So you don't necessarily have to have great pass rushers if you can do that kind of a defense. So, what does the Dolphins defense have? They have great secondary players. And they have a lot of versatility and depth there, too, especially at the safety position. In terms of... you think about some of the guys that are, Jalen Davis. Like, there's a lot there that can be utilized. So that's a huge plus. So, to speak on your question, talk about how dominant the Dolphins defense can be. That's how it can be dominant. I feel like if we do some of the same things that New England did last year, with a lot of confusing looks, a lot of zero-man blitzing, I feel like this team could be very successful. I feel like that's how the team is going to get a lot of pressure on opposing teams' quarterbacks. Is that, how do you think the Steelers, even though they're a zone blitz team, they're not a man blitz team, the Steelers are always high in the sacks list because of that. They're a very aggressive team. Now, over the years, they've had great outside rushers, and they have TJ Watt now, but even when they didn't, they did pretty decent. So I feel like there's better ways, there's more ways than one to get pressure. And I think Brian has said that in his press conference as well. So that's how the Dolphins do it. They just, to recap really quick, to be a little bit more clear, how the Dolphins do it is they utilize the same strategy the Patriots had last year. They do a lot of zero-man blitzing, which is basically everyone is left on an island. There's really no one in the middle of the field, unless you're trying to do some craziness. But there's really nobody to help anybody. It's basically all one-on-one across the board, and you're sending everybody at the quarterback. It's like a jailbreak blitz. But you have to have people that can cover if you're going to do that on a consistent basis. If you do, your defense can be very successful. And you could do a lot on that. You can confuse a lot of different people if you do that. So that's how they do it. You don't have to have great pass rushers to run that defense. You just have to have great cover players, and we do. This next question comes from Take Me Out. Take Me Out asks, it looks like Jacksonville will be in a numbers crunch in 2020, which may leave Miles Jack as the odd man out. Can you see Miami parting ways with Kiko Alonso and bringing in Miles Jack to play strong side linebacker? Also, with versatility to play inside linebacker. And also, strong coverage skills. Yeah, it's hard to look that far ahead, but yes, I could see, Miles Jack is a very talented player. Fun fact, the Dolphins wanted Miles Jack. If the knee injury thing never came out, then he would have been our first round pick. But since the injury did come out and we waited till he fell to the second round, we were going to select him with our second round pick, but the Jacksonville Jaguars leaped in front of us and picked him instead. So, just a little fun fact about Miles Jack. This next question comes from Ron. Ron asks, do you think Flores follows through on what he said about picking the actual best player to start at each position? I mean, for example, if Parker and Williams go neck and neck till the third preseason game, but then Williams looks better, does Flores stick with Parker like Gase has done the past 3 years, or does he go with Williams, the young guy? He's going to go with Preston Williams. There's no doubt in my mind. First of all, really, there hasn't been anybody to compete with DP on that level at that position. He was the only really tall athletic guy that we really relied on to be that guy. We never really tried to replace that. So, yeah, I feel like he will. I really can't give you any evidence other than what the man has said. And the philosophy that they run in New England is very much that. Just because you're a big name doesn't mean that they're not going to cut you for someone who isn't a big name, or if you have a big contract, stuff like that. That's why they don't pay a lot of, big money in free agency. That's why they, rarely go after those big names in free agency, is because of that. You really don't have that pressure to start that player just because you're paying them all that money. So they avoid a lot of that a lot of the times. So, and then anytime they have players in-house that they've developed, who have become great players, they have gotten out from under a lot of the time. So they're not very sentimental in that way, and they don't care if you're making a lot of money. They don't care. They just care about winning and who is the best player and competitive, all that other stuff. So that's why I have confidence that Brian will do that, because of the teachings that he came from. I'm all over the place today. This next question comes from Jay. Jay asks, who do you think can be the most improved player for us this year? I think Charles Harris or Parker. I'm going to go with Mike Gesicki. I feel like he is going to have the most improvement. Granted, he's starting from the bottom. But I feel like he will have the most improvement out of any of the players on the roster. He's going to be very good this upcoming season. Again, if things go right, this offense can be very, very good. There's a lot of talented players on it at the skill positions. So, yeah, I'm going to go with Mike Gesicki. I have faith. This next question comes from Ron. Ron asks, when Devontae Parker gets cut, do you think Preston Williams will take the number 11 in the same number he wore at Colorado State? That's a little getting ahead of our overalls there. I don't know about that, Ron. That's my answer to that question. This next question comes from David. David asks, what do you make of Omar Kelly's comment that McCain is now playing free safety and Fitzpatrick is in the slot? Personally, I think Fitzpatrick was elite last year when in the slot, so I've actually come to terms with a number 11 playing slot. Today's NFL, a lot happens in the slot. Just not sure about McCain at safety. That's kind of the same thing that I was talking about. Example that I gave, I kind of agree with you. I just feel like anywhere Minka is, he's great. But Bobby is the question mark. It's going to be interesting, man. I have faith that it'll work. And again, the example that I gave earlier, that really doesn't mean that he's playing free safety. So, we'll see what happens when we watch it on Sundays. This next question comes from Ron. Ron asks, what type of offense is O'Shea going to run? Is it going to be the quick pass game, run the ball like New England, or something different? Well, the one thing that I feel like gets misconstrued a lot of the times is that New England really tailors their game plan to whatever the heck the team they play that week. Whatever their weakness is, they try to attack it. And a lot of the time, it's the I formation, because a lot of times the teams that they play around the league can't defend it because they're not used to playing it. They're used to playing these high octane passing attacks. So I feel like it's going to be the same thing that you've seen in New England over the years. It's going to be the exact same, to answer your question. This next question comes from Ron. Ron asks which trait of Josh Rosen do you feel that he needs to fix or improve for him to take the next stamp? I'm gonna read you that. That was terrible. Oh God, I can't even say this next question. This next question comes from Ron. Ron asks, which trait of Josh Rosen's do you feel that he needs to fix or improve for him to take the next step as an above-average quarterback? For example, I think Rosen needs to improve when he comes to the line of scrimmage to not have his mind made up where he is throwing the ball, regardless of the defense's coverage. To me, that was an issue with Tannehill as well. It leads to missed opportunities to hit open guys, causing the offense to stall out and punt or throw an interception. I agree with that. I don't agree with the whole Josh Rosen thing, but that being important is obviously very important. Anytime you watch the great quarterbacks in the league, their heads go from one side of the field all the way to the other. That's usually the great pocket passers. There's a lot of players that are great quarterbacks that don't do that. You kind of use their athleticism. But I feel like he will do that. I've seen him do it. I feel like the thing that he needs to be more, when I've watched him, to answer your question, the thing that I think he needs to do is be more decisive and be quicker with his decision making. Like, there was a lot of times that he just missed throws because the timing was off. He didn't make quick decisions, and that, I think, had a lot to do with him being a rookie. But he needs to be more decisive and confident in what his reads, and get the ball out and just see it faster. He just needs to see it faster. That's probably the thing that I would say that he needs to improve on most. Like, there's a lot of times where he could have got the ball out on a quick out or something like that. And if he was on time, the ball would have been like a 5 to 10 yard completion. And sometimes it was a pick just because he was late on the read. So he just needs to be more decisive and confident in his reads and his decision making. I feel like that's the thing that he needs to do better. Is that the last question? Yeah, that is the last question. That was awesome that you guys. I mean, that many questions. That was amazing. That literally carried us through the episode. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, please support any way you can. And I cannot wait to see you guys in the next one.